On today's episode of Locked On Wild, 3 center targets with size in round 2 of the NHL Draft, but do they have the rest of the arsenal?
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we have 3 center targets to take a look at for round 2 in the NHL Draft. Tyler Hopkins, Theo Stockselius, and Carter Klippenstein. We'll see if any of them have potential for the Wild to take with the 52nd overall pick. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, host of Seth on Sports, and credentialed media member. And once again, I'd just like to kind of set the table for these draft profiles that we're going to do ahead of the NHL Draft on Friday. I like to go into these blind for the most part to try not to have preformed opinions about these players until the show is rolling. So we'll go through 3 names, and we'll see after we hear from experts as to what they bring to the table, if they would be good picks for the Minnesota Wild at 52. And we are going to start with a young man by the name of Tyler Hopkins. Tyler Hopkins played for the Kingston Frontenacs of the OHL. He was born in 2007, 6'1", 181 pounds, left-hand shot, and his position is center. His rankings, and this profile is put together by the Hockey Writers, by Matthew Zader. NHL Central Scouting has him ranked 52nd among North American skaters. Perfect for the Minnesota Wild at the 52nd overall pick. Peter Berrettini's got him ranked 109th. Andrew Forbes' March rankings has him an honorable mention. FC Hockey has him 90th. Bob McKenzie's got him 54th. McKean's Hockey has him 67th. Elite Prospects has him 57th. And before we get into more of the breakdown from the Hockey Writers, here is what Corey Pronman of The Athletic had to say. Hopkins played in all situations for Kingston this season. He's a decent-sized center who skates quite well. He has the quickness to get by NHL defenders and enough puck skills to generate a lot of controlled entries. I'd like to see him get to the inside more to create chances, but he has a fine compete level off the puck and can kill penalties. The question on Hopkins will mainly be whether he's smart enough and creates enough offense to play in the NHL. As the season went along, I thought he showed more in that department, and I could see him as a versatile bottom 6 forward, likely on the wing. Okay, so that's good to note right off the bat that it's likely that he may transition to a wing position. Pronman graded him at average in skating, puck skills, hockey sense, and compete level. Now back over to the Hockey Writers. Hopkins wasn't much of an offensive producer last season, but he took a huge jump in his draft year, going from 6 goals and 13 points in 59 games to 20 goals and 51 points in 67 games. When he was asked about the surge, he said, "I think my first year was more about playing a defensive role and learning the league. This year, I've started to take that step, which I'm pretty happy about. So far, it's been going well. While Hopkins still focuses a lot on his own end and playing well defensively, he has become a more well-rounded two-way player and is up there as one of the best in the Ontario Hockey League right now." As a result, Hopkins was a key piece of the Frontenacs this season and was relied upon heavily by head coach Troy Mann in all situations. According to Neutral Zone, he averaged almost the same amount of ice time on both the power play, 2 minutes, 1 second, and penalty kill, 2 minutes, 10 seconds per game, and was consistently used in the faceoff dot, averaging 14 draws per game with a 49% success rate. He was also a high minute man overall, logging an average of 19 minutes a night. Hopkins' two-way prowess isn't his only strength either. He also has great speed and agility, often getting in on the forecheck by pressuring opponents. His frame and style have been described as a burgeoning power forward, and he's not afraid to be physical and get into the gritty side of the game, whether it be along the boards or at the front of the net. He also has a quick release on his shot and notable playmaking and puck handling skills in the offensive zone. All in all, Hopkins has a solid foundation to build on as he moves to the next level of his development. With his power forward frame, speed, defensive awareness, and reliability in all situations, he could become an underrated part of a championship team. The fact that he's coachable and always looking for ways to improve his game bodes well for his future too, as he is always open to feedback and making himself better. His draft projection. A lot of teams will be looking for centers like Hopkins once the draft enters the second, third, and fourth rounds. Most rankings have him exactly in that range, with the highest projection being 54th overall and the lowest being 109th. The Hockey Writers could see him going in the third round with the possibility of the late second, especially considering his high floor of a bottom six center that can play a key role on the penalty kill and maybe even contribute on the power play at times. His strengths: his two-way game, face-offs, his speed, his hockey IQ, his work ethic, the quick release on his shot, good forechecker, and versatility, areas that are under construction. He's inconsistent with his physicality, his overall strength, and his limited offensive upside. So here's what I'm going to say about the center position for the Minnesota Wild. I feel like going forward, and I remember this got such a polarizing reaction when he was taken. Charlie Stramel, a player, a center with size. I feel like for the Minnesota Wild, and it's easier said than done, but there needs to be a little bit of a look at finding centers that can give you both. You look at the Florida Panthers, for example, how they line up down the middle. You've got Alexander Barkov, you've got Sam Bennett, you've got Anton Lindell as your top three centers. Now, it's not 100% the case across the board, but Barkov and Bennett especially are on the beefier side. They are very hard to play against. And it feels like with the speed and skill on the wings, if you can find centers that can move around while also still being able to add the size profile, that's a diamond in the rough right there. And I like the fact that Hopkins has shown great ability on the defensive side of the puck while also having speed to work with and the ability to add some offense to his game and also to assist on special teams. Now, he would be somebody that would be coming in, a handful of years from now. So what you have as bottom six players right now is not going to be there at the time that he would potentially be looking to make an impact. And for as many Riley Heights and Danilo Yurovs as you have, the guys that are going to be at the top of the lineup, you got to have the guys at the bottom of the lineup as well. So as far as Hopkins goes, scouts don't describe Hopkins as flashy, but reliable, well-rounded, and structurally sound. Three things that usually translate to a long NHL career. He won't win any scoring titles, but he brings the intangibles that every team needs in their lineup to have success at the highest level. As such, his ceiling's probably a third-line center that can step into a top six role in a pinch, with his floor at the very least a fourth-line penalty-killing specialist. Risk is 2 out of 5. Reward is 4 out of 5. And again, get you somebody that can do both. Get you somebody that has the ability to use the size to work on that. And adding strength and adding, poundage to the frame, that will come. That is the one thing that you can do for a guy that is 6'1", you can add size to your frame. Having the speed and having the ability to contribute on both ends of the puck, that's what's intangible to me. So does this get my stamp of approval as a potential pick for the Minnesota Wild at 52 in the second round? Yes, it does. I'd be intrigued by Tyler Hopkins and what he brings to the table. When we come back, we will move on to yet another name, this time a little further over in Europe. We'll talk about Theo Stockselius when we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. They are my guilt-free snack. You don't have to worry about carbs, sugars, or any of those bad ingredients that you don't want to be putting a ton of in your body. Wonderful Pistachios are 100% guilt-free because you're adding fiber, protein to your system, which is exactly what you need to be doing. We don't get enough fiber or protein in our diets, and Wonderful Pistachios can help get you there. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On to our next draft profile, and we are talking about Theo Stockselius here today, a center from Djurgårdens, born on July 24th, 2007. Originally from Sweden, 6'2", 181, left shot center. The rankings. NHL Central Scouting has him 13th among North American skaters. Peter Baracchini's got him 71st. Andrew Forbes has Stockselius ranked 79th. Bob McKenzie has him as an honorable mention, and TSN's Craig Button has him 33rd. Djurgårdens is producing some impressive names to keep an eye on for the 2025 NHL Draft, including Anton Frondell, Eric Nielsen, and Arvid Drott. We can now add Theo Stockselius to that list as his stock has been continuing to rise in the second half of the season. Stockselius outproduced both of these players as he had 51 points in 40 games behind only Wilson Bjork with 67, who is also up for the 2025 NHL Draft, and his younger brother Vigo, who had 74, a top name for the 2026 draft. Stockselius added another 16 points in 9 playoff games as a result of his ability to elevate his play in big games. Keep that in mind as we talk more about Theo Stockselius. So let's listen to what Corey Pronman has to say about Theo Stockselius. Stockselius was quite good at the Swedish junior level this season as a top scorer on a top team. He's a skilled big man who excels at creating offense around the net and in small areas. He has shown the talent to score and generate chances at the junior level. There are reasonable questions about how his game will fare against better players. His skating isn't the best with a somewhat heavy stride. While he's good at using his big body to create space for himself around the net, he's not overly physical, and his off-puck compete can be an issue. He projects as a useful depth forward for a team. Skating got below average, puck skills, hockey sense, compete level, all average, according to Corey Pronman. More from the hockey writers. Stockselius has been flying under the radar as the combination of his goal scoring and playmaking makes him an offensive threat. He can spot teammates with ease with his accurate tape-to-tape passes, spotting seams and connecting through high traffic areas, leading to quality scoring opportunities. His accuracy and ability to open things up makes everything that much easier for his teammates. When he's not dishing the puck, he's always finding the open space to make himself available to unleash his accurate and quick wrist shot. If there's nothing there, he uses his strong skating abilities in order to find those open lanes to get a shot off. He's got a high motor and drive to his game, doing everything he can to win battles and regain possession and extend offensive zone time. He's got great mobility, speed, and edges to weave his way through traffic and can swiftly lead a rush in transition. The IQ on both sides of the puck allows him to excel as he's always in position to generate offense or even anticipate breaking up plays on the back check and in the defensive zone. He has a very well-rounded game as he's constantly pressuring puck carriers and disrupting plays effectively. Stockselius does a great job constantly push the pace of play and puts himself in great spots offensively. While he has great size, he needs to use that to his advantage more in order to be more lethal. There are times where he can get overzealous with his puck handling and lose control. Taking that extra second could help him out tremendously. Stockselius has continued to see his draft stock improve throughout the season. His play has put him on the map as a legitimate second-round selection. However, where he'll go remains to be seen as other outlets have him scattered through this part of the draft. Either way, he'll be a great value pick given his consistency of production at all levels this season. So his strengths, a strong two-way game and IQ, strong playmaking vision, reliant defensive game, swift and accurate wrist shot, speed, and mobility. The areas that need work include improving his puck control, adding more strength despite having a good frame, and consistently using his size to his advantage. Okay, right off the bat, as far as the areas to improve, again, as we have said with other players, Stockselius is 6'2". And as he adds more weight to his frame, using the size is not going to be an issue. It's at this point in his development, it's just kind of awkward because you don't have, you don't have as much poundage to throw around. But if he adds some more to it, that's going to entice him to use his strength more. Puck control, puck handling is obviously one to keep an eye on. But the things that I like about Theo Stockselius here is I like the idea of having players that are cerebral, that can quickly analyze and identify what's going on the ice and make quick decisions with the puck, can make quick decisions as to where they need to go with it, who is open on the ice, how to get them the puck, so that you're not having these situations where a player waits too long to make a pass and the opportunity to make said pass has passed you by. Good playmaking here. A reliant defensive game is an interesting way to put things. It assumes that the defensive side is the area that needs the most work, but as of right now, the defensive side of the puck is good enough to play for Stockselius. So I would have to say, based off of what they put here, there's definitely a lot to like about what Stockselius brings to the table. Stockselius's tools and skill set will allow him to become a very versatile and effective middle six forward. He has the ability to produce offensively, but is relied upon as a defensive presence. Whether on the power play or at even strength, he will become an offensive producer in any situation. And if he can utilize his strength more and learn how to do that, then that's going to turn him into one of those net front guys on the power play. And again, your bottom six right now, it certainly looks a particular direction for the Minnesota Wild. It's not going to look that way 3 or 4 years from now, which is when we would likely see Stockselius. If he were the pick, that's likely when we would see him make an impact with this Minnesota Wild team. Danilo Yurov, Riley Heidt are at this point expected to be the centers of the top six of the future. Charlie Stramel certainly is trying to have a say in that as well. So if the higher picks are the guys that you can slot into the top of the lineup as the centers, you still got to fill out those bottom two lines. And if you can get centers that can bring you both, that takes care of an issue that the Minnesota Wild are currently dealing with. Is, a lot of those bottom six players are one or the other. If they can bring you both, then that's how you start to compete with the other teams throughout the Central, throughout the West, and throughout the NHL as well. So would I be okay with Theo Stockselius being the pick at number 52? Yeah, I think I would go thumbs up for Theo Stockselius as well. Combination of great defense and good offense, ability to contribute on special teams, and somebody that will utilize his frame as he grows into it, as he adds more weight, more poundage. Then it's going to be easier for him to throw his body around once he has a body to throw. So that is a look at Theo Stockselius. We will finish today's episode of Locked On Wild taking a look at Carter Klippenstein. That is on the way as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild right after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, make sure to hit that like button so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We will be getting you, a handful of draft profiles here the rest of the week. We'll at least give you a baseline for players that are projected to go around 52. We're going to focus mainly on the second round. Obviously, we'll quickly pivot if the Wild do end up managing to add a first-round pick, but we're focusing mainly on round two for the 2026 NHL Draft. So, going to be interesting to see what the Minnesota Wild end up doing, because also no third-round pick. So we're mainly focusing on round number two because that'll be the most impact draft player that the Minnesota Wild add in this draft, unless they make some new moves to acquire additional picks. All right. Final profile here for today. We're talking Carter Klippenstein. Klippenstein played for the Brandon Wheat Kings in the WHL. He was born November 25th, 2006 in Lethbridge, Alberta. 6'3", 181 pounds. He's a left shot center. Rankings, NHL Central Scouting had him 88th among North American skaters. FC Hockey had him 192nd, and McKeen's Hockey had him 229th. Carter Klippenstein is a gritty power forward who has the potential to be a staple in a team's bottom six if he's able to reach his full potential. He specializes in using his physicality and size to disrupt plays, which could translate well to his professional game. The main concern surrounding Klippenstein is his lack of offensive production. He brings very little offensive upside, having just 14 goals and 14 assists this season for the Western Hockey League's Brandon Wheat Kings. When he does score, it's no surprise that many of his goals come from near the crease. He battles for loose pucks during scrambles in front of the goaltender and occasionally knocks him in. He does have a dangerous shot when he gets space in the slot as well, though, but he doesn't utilize it very often. The best case for Klippenstein would be carving out a defensive specialist role at the NHL level, similar to that of Nico Sturm of the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. However, Klippenstein is a very raw talent that likely won't see the top level of hockey for at least a few years, and it's far from a guarantee that he ever makes it to the show. So this is more of a project pick for the Minnesota Wild if they go this route at 52. But let's hear what Corey Pronman has to say about Carter Klippenstein. Klippenstein is easy to like if you see his best games or shifts. He's a tall, fast forward who competes very hard. He's super physical and uses his speed to get to the net to create offense. He will be able to win a lot of battles versus pro defenders, and the hardness element in his game will make him a coach's favorite. The amount of offense he has will be the issue. Klippenstein shows flashes of puck skills and scoring ability, but it's inconsistent, and he doesn't see the ice well. If you are a believer, you see a path for him to be a bottom six forward who kills penalties and checks well, but he will need to show a little more scoring for me to get there, that being Pronman. Compete level gets a high end from Pronman. Hockey sense and puck skills below average, and the skating gets an average. More on Klippenstein from the hockey writers. His draft projection, Klippenstein will likely be selected in the latter half of the NHL draft, with the 5th or 6th round seeming like the most fitting place for him to get selected. His offensive limitations will hinder his ability to go higher, but he brings a lot of qualities that teams value. At that stage in the draft, he'll be one of the few options who seem well-equipped to overcome the odds and make it to the NHL. With that being said, he does have a low ceiling at the NHL level, which will limit how high he goes in the draft, and there's a possibility that he doesn't get selected at all. Klippenstein's strengths include size, his reliability in his own zone. He brings energy through physicality and a strong work ethic. Well, what I'll say, and the areas under construction, his skating ability leaves much to be desired and his inconsistent offensive contribution. I'm going to say it. This feels like the kind of player that Bill Guerin would really look at. Somebody who, has to kind of fight extra hard in order to find their place to the NHL and find their place on the roster. I'm seeing a lot of red flags, with the limited offense that can be brought to the table and not being able to skate. That's a big red flag as well. As far as NHL potential goes, Klippenstein brings a lot of intangibles to the table with his playing style. He works hard, plays with an edge, and can contribute defensively. While his offensive deficiency will limit his ice time at the professional level, he certainly has the potential to carve out a fourth-line role if everything goes smoothly in his development. He'd be a defensive specialist through and through with limited ability to put points on the board. So, again, though, you see a role for players like this as I think Nico Sturm is a good comp. A center who can win you faceoffs on the fourth line, brings a little toughness to the table. But let's also keep in mind that we're kind of moving away from that. If you're going to compete against the best that there are in the Western Conference, the best that there are in the East, you got to have scoring on at least 3 of your lines. That fourth line, can be a little bit of a game changer, a little bit of change of pace, but you got to have the ability to put goals on the board with at least 3 of your lines. And if those players can add defensive value as well, that's a bonus. That's a plus. If you can get both, it's worth looking into. But I think this is the first pass as far as pick number 52 goes. Klippenstein, it's just, again, just the red flags. I think having players, even if they have size, having the ability to skate is just too important to where I feel like Klippenstein would just, be similar to what the Minnesota Wild have right now. So while he does bring a lot of, hustle and heart, which is something that a lot of coaches really like, they like the players that are going to give you that extra. That's admirable. That's honorable. And that's going to be something that gets him to the NHL level if he does make it, is because he's going to be one of those guys that just outworks everybody. But as far as what the Minnesota Wild are looking for, this is a thumbs down for me. I would pass. I'd pass on Klippenstein as the pick at 52. I want a center that is going to be able to, quick thinker, gives you something on both sides of the ice, has good offensive upside, is big but can skate. And players like that do exist. That's becoming the mold of what you need your center to be at the NHL level. You need to have somebody that can do a little bit of everything. And the fact that the first two players that we talked about did have those intangible elements, I'd be more likely to draft them than I would Carter Klippenstein. So that's a look at Mr. Carter Klippenstein ahead of the 2025 NHL Draft. We'll have plenty of additional previews as we get you set for the draft coming up at the end of this week. Of these three players, which would you be most intrigued by for the Minnesota Wild? Would it be Tyler Hopkins? Would it be Theo Stockselius? Would it be Carter Klippenstein? At this point, is it even worth speculating as to who the Wild are going to draft with a second-round pick and then picks in the 4th, the 5th, and I believe the 6th rounds? That's all the Wild have at this point for draft picks. So Judd Brackett, not a ton to work with, but this is where Brackett gets a chance to really shine for this Minnesota Wild organization. And that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Once again, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. You can also find us on your favorite audio platforms as well. So subscribe and rate 5 stars or whatever you feel is an appropriate number for the show. We certainly appreciate those audio reviews as well. You can also review us on Spotify. So just throw us a review, whatever platform you're on. Love to hear from those listeners that enjoy the show each and every day of the week. We will be back with you tomorrow. We've got a new episode coming right up. So until then, make sure to keep your ears peeled as we break down everything the Minnesota Wild are doing this offseason with new episodes every Monday through Friday right here as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day.